Number 10. What if Aunt May was a mutant with claws? I just love how this is posed as a scenario where Aunt May just uses her claws in place of the good old-fashioned parental guilt trip. Aunt May is having dinner with her nephew Peter and his girlfriend Mary Jane. She cooked for them and they immensely enjoyed their meal, but when she offers them a pie for dessert, they both insist they're just too full and they cannot eat another bite. They offer that after their date, they're going to see a show, they might have a slice upon their return. But this isn't good enough for Aunt May. Fortunately, in this story, she has Wolverine claws, which she snicks out and uses to intimidate the youngsters into postponing their date so they can stay for dessert. She uses her claws, of course, to also slice the pie, because Aunt May. What else is she gonna use them for? Although I would really love an alternate world where Aunt May just was Wolverine. Or I was posing earlier an idea of an alternate world where everyone is Aunt May. What about that world? Number 9. What if Iron Man, demon in an armor? Remember that time Tony Stark and Victor Von Doom swapped bodies? Oh yeah, that's the thing that happened in this What If special out of 2010. Here both brilliant minds were roommates in college and Victor used a machine on Stark to swap minds with him. Stark's memories were also wiped, so he never knew he had been Tony Stark. Victor, as Tony, used his millions to create his own inventions, but ultimately ended up ruining the Stark name with less than noble pursuits and his own greed. On the other hand, Stark as Victor succumbed to alcoholism but recovered and then created Doom Industries, a brilliant company responsible for its own Doom armor suits and technological advancements. In the end, Doom in Stark's body attempted to attack Doom Industries but was apprehended by Stark in Doom's body. He then revealed the swap that had taken place years earlier and bargained to swap back in exchange for his freedom, but Stark in Doom's body is just like, nah thanks, I kinda have the better company and life now in your body. I like this body. Why would I want to be Tony now when I can just be the honorable Dr. Doom? Good point. Good point. Why would you ever want to be Tony Stark when you could be Dr. Doom? That's the real question. That'd be awesome. Number 8. What if Sgt Fury had fought World War II in outer space? This story offers a glimpse into an alternate reality where World War II was fought in space? This story takes place in an alternate reality where instead of being divided by eastern and western fronts, the battle is divided between beta and alpha sectors. As such, we get to see Sergeant Nick Fury fighting alongside the Howling Commandos in outer space, smoking a cigar even while wearing a space helmet. Seems like a bad idea, but it's Nick Fury, so that's what he's gonna do. It's also explained that we have Da Vinci's inventions to thank for this early technological advancement, which led to us getting to outer space in the 1940s, which is maybe the best bit of exposition explanation in the book, and just in general that I've read. It's pretty ridiculous. Oh, and of course we also get to watch our heroes fight aliens, because space. Number 7. What if the world knew Daredevil was blind? Yeah, this is a weird story, especially because it kind of implies that if Daredevil wasn't blind and didn't have superpowers, his life would actually be better or easier. As though, like, you know, if you're blind, your life is going to be terrible, but if you're not blind, your life is great, which I don't think is true. That's not how that works. I mean, he's also still got an enemy in Wilson Fisk, I'd assume, so I just feel like this is a big oversimplification. In this story, the world finds out that Daredevil is blind, and as a result, those close to him begin to piece together that Daredevil is in fact Matt Murdock, because you know, Matt Murdock is blind. Get it? He then ends up having his sight restored via an operation, unmasks, and lives happily ever after with Karen, trading his heroic initials of DD for DA and becoming the new district attorney of New York. He's swapping it out. I also love how Karen's like, oh, thank goodness you're not a superhero, now we can get married. Number 6. What if Black Bolt talked in his sleep? This is a very short story, and I think you can imagine how it ends if you are familiar with the Inhuman King known as Black Bolt, but it's also just very humorously written. You can find this single-page story near the back of issue 9 of What If Volume Number 2. Apparently when Black Bolt eats pineapple pizza before bed, it has disastrous consequences. Also, good to know what kind of pizza Black Bolt likes. I personally also love pineapple on my pizza, but I feel like that just lets you know if someone's cool or not. Oh, the strange things that you learn about people and pizza. If Black Bolt talked in his sleep all the time, the Inhumans would have a lot of rebuilding to do all the time. I also just like how resigned some of these Inhumans are in that last panel. Like, oh, he did it again, I guess I'm just gonna sleep on some rubble for the rest of the night. That's just how it is, shucks. And only Medusa is the one that's mad. She's like, baby, I told you not to eat that pizza. This always happens. Number 5. What if Wolverine had a styrofoam skeleton? Issue 100 is just one of the best for some real weird weird stories. One of the stories it offers us is only told through a mock-up cover, but it's so good it's just gotta be mentioned because the cover is just too good. It also is presented beside another great mock-up cover offering an alternate story where Peter Parker became Sheep Boy instead of Spider-Man. Sheep Boy, I love it. In the Wolverine mock-up, we're offered an alternate Logan who goes by the codename Wolverwimp. He is cowering on the front cover, about to have his styrofoam skeleton ripped out by Maggie Nito, a mean little girl. I also just love the reference to Wolverine also losing his nose when he lost his adamantium that's on there. Mock-up what if stories are actually the best. I wish we got a full story of this. Someone write that, please. Number 4. What if Iron Man was trapped in the time of King Arthur? The craziest thing about this what if is that it's actually kind of an alternate retelling of a real-life main continuity story where Iron Man was transported to Camelot in medieval times with Dr. Doom and managed to escape. Although this story offers the alternative of, what if he wasn't able to escape and only Dr. Doom got out? You can find it in What If Volume 1, Issue 33. The answer to the question is that Iron Man would be drained of energy, get frustrated in realizing that, he couldn't rebuild a time machine, and ends up becoming Sir Anthony of Iron, an Iron Knight at King Arthur's Round Table. In fact, he uses his suit to help protect the realm from the evil Morgana, defeating her, but in the ensuing battle is unable to prevent King Arthur from becoming mortally wounded. With his dying breath, Arthur makes Sir Anthony his successor, even though they kinda just met, but it's fine I guess. Which means that the Anthony of Iron Man's past, his past self from the future, would probably be really weirded out if he ever read any stories of Camelot. He'd be like, Sir Anthony of Iron became the king. Wait, I'm Iron Man. What? Maybe that was actually his inspiration in the alternate reality to create the Iron Man suit. And now Tony's just stuck in like a time loop. Number 3. What if Wolverine was the Lord of Vampires? In this story, Wolverine becomes the new Lord of Vampires, which is kinda weird considering what we know of Wolverine's healing factor now, but this is also obviously an alternate reality and a story that was written in the 90s, so there's that. Here Wolverine is transformed into a vampire by Dracula. It also features a sweet vampire hunter version of Punisher, who is sporting Doctor Strange's cape, and I personally think that the Punisher looks amazing in that cape. So lavish, I just want him to wear capes all the time now. In the end, Punisher is defeated, but Wolverine has a crisis of conscience and ends up flipping to the side of good once more, killing himself and all the other vampire supes and villains he'd made at the same time. And for some reason, Doc Ock's body and tentacles turn to dust. Now, shouldn't his tentacles be okay though? Because they're not made of his tissue. Also, I love when people are like, you're dust, and all their clothes become dust. I'm like, shouldn't their clothes be fine? Anyways, it's a small technical thing, but it bothers me. Number 2. What if Paper Skin? Remember when we were talking about issue 100 of volume 2 of What If? Well, an actual story that is featured in there is called Paper Skin. It is honestly such a strange story. I need to share it with you. This is a what if story that seems to posit the question of what if Mr. Sinister could offer Gambit a cure for Rogue's powers. It's revealed in the story that Gambit has already betrayed the X-Men by bargaining with Sinister, offering important Cerebro files in exchange for what he wants. Although what Gambit wants is not actually for him, but is kind of for all mutant kind, a cure to the Legacy virus. As he's about to leave after getting that cure, Sinister offers him something else that he simply can't resist. A cure for Rogue, his one true love, to help her control her powers. He agrees to steal one more thing for Sinister in exchange for the cure, a Tithe box. Sinister has been searching for them and collecting them over the years. In the end, Rogue accepts the cure, but can't accept that Gambit has been helping Sinister, and so she kills him, taking his powers and also his look seemingly, which is kind of weird. It's like Gambit with boobs, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this art, but okay. She goes after Sinister only to find the secret of what the boxes contained was Marvel Comics! Gasp. Now Sinister has so much information because he's been reading Marvel Comics. What a weird reality. What a meta reality. Number 1. What if Avengers vs X-Men? In this bizarro story, Magneto helps to ensure that Hope ends up getting the Phoenix Force instead of it being split up into Iron Man by 5 parts, which possesses and creates the Phoenix 5. Magneto is seemingly helping Hope to control these new and awesome powers, but when she struggles and begins to turn dark, he suggests she give him some power to help her. In reality, Magneto kinda wants all the power for himself, which is just what he takes. This all happens in the last issue, by the way, of this 4-part what if story, and after Magneto takes the power, it gets pretty weird. Yeah, that's not where it ends, it just keeps going forever. He takes the power and is instantly corrupted by it. As such, Xavier somehow uses his powers to temporarily mess with Magneto's Magneto's sight, despite the fact that Magneto is wearing his helmet, and then Wolverine snicks him through the eyes. This results in Magneto basically exploding, killing everyone on the planet, and destroying the Earth. Then Jean shows up randomly and just kinda reveals she saw all of this coming. She uses her Phoenix powers to fix the planet, bringing back plant and animal life, but not people for some reason. She says it's up to her and Wolverine as basically an Eve and an Adam of sorts to do that. She could've just brought all those people back, I'm pretty sure, because she's got the power of the Phoenix, but yeah, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. Number 10. What if Doctor Doom became the Thing? In this one shot, we get to see an alternate reality where instead of Ben Grimm being present when the FF first transformed, Victor Von Doom was in his place instead. He found himself, while in his armor, transformed into the Thing, while the rest of the team was granted the same powers as normal. Ben Grimm ends up actually getting caught in a radioactive explosion when a reactor blows, which transforms him then into the Hulk, and he and Doom/the Thing battle it out. In the end, Hulk Grimm is about to smash Thing Doom, but is talked down by the rest of the FF. So like, put that rock down. Calm down. It's all good, Ben. He ends up joining them while Doom still becomes the team's villain, bearing very different scars because, you know, under his mask, he's the Thing! Number 9. What if Spider-Man's parents destroyed his family? This story takes an already ridiculous one and offers us another take on it. Although to be fair, I actually like this version of the story better, to be honest. Remember when Chameleon made those robots to act as Peter's parents just to, I don't know, reveal them as fakes and torment him? Well, in this story, his fake robo-parents are even worse. They end up murdering Aunt May and Mary Jane and make sure that Spider-Man is framed for the murders. In retaliation, while on the run from the law, Spider-Man, pushed to his breaking point, kills Chameleon and his robo-parents, getting back at them for good before turning himself into the authorities. It's a much darker take on this story. So dark. Before we move on to this next spot, just a reminder to click that like if you haven't already if you're enjoying this video. It really helps us out a ton. Number 8. What if Aunt May died instead of Uncle Ben? This one actually changed things up quite a bit, turning Peter Parker from the life of being a hero to more of a delinquent just scraping by. Everything in Peter's origins goes the same except Uncle Ben being shot. Aunt May is shot during a burglary at her home instead while she is there alone. Uncle Ben was out picking up a gallon of milk and both he and Peter arrive home to find the police and Aunt May's corpse. It's then that Peter decides to very dramatically reveal he is Spider-Man. This part's just really ridiculous, but I love it. He goes after the burglar, ready to kill the man for taking his aunt's life. In the end, the thief falls out of a window just as Uncle Ben arrives on the scene. Rather than let Peter take the rap when the police show up or confess what truly happened, because he could just be like, that person just fell out a window, Uncle Ben confesses to killing the man for murdering his wife. Even though he didn't. Ben goes to jail and without anyone to guide him, Peter gives up being Spider-Man. He does however don the costume once more to put JJ in his place for coming after him after the death of his son John Jameson, who in this reality wasn't rescued by Spider-Man, because Spider-Man wasn't Spider-Man at the time. He also calls JJ some pretty harsh names considering the guy recently lost his son. Jeez, Spidey! Basically, if Peter Parker doesn't have Aunt May to guide him, he's kind of a jerk and is kind of terrible. So that's what I learned about that. Uncle Ben is not as good as Aunt May, apparently. Number 7. What if Green Goblin stole the Infinity Gauntlet? I personally love how this story just jumps right into it. The introduction reminds us of both the Dark Reign and Infinity events, and then they just jump right into Norman Osborn murdering his originally own Dark Avenger Sentry with the Infinity Gauntlet. Wow. Also, how is Norman even able to wield such a powerful weapon? Because he's just like a normal human, right? Or I don't know, maybe his craziness from his Green Goblin stuff makes him possible to hold it? I don't know. I guess he just is, because what ifs. In this alternate universe, it's revealed that Norman Osborn takes the gauntlet and uses it to reshape the world and, by assumption, also the entire galaxy in his image, all to get back at his dad for mistreating him years earlier. In the end, Thanos shows up to claim what is his, but with the power of the gauntlet, Norman makes short work of him. Thanos also weirdly comes in telling Norman that no amount of power will ever get him the love he seeks. Kind of a weird line for Thanos there. After the battle is won, Norman responds while standing over Thanos' charred remains, "My only wish is for power, love is for fools." He then ends up killing his father from the past in a rage, and as such perishes himself because of a time paradox. Because if you kill your dad from the past, you can't exist. Although I think at that point in his life, his dad may have had him as a child, so I don't know. But that's the end. Poof, it's gone. Number 6. What if Conan the Barbarian walked the earth today? Half of this what if story is just meant to re-establish Conan and explain how he gets to modern day New York. But when he does arrive, it is a pretty crazy and strange time. This apparently, according to the cover anyways, was the most requested and highly anticipated what if of the day when the first volume of What Ifs was happening in the 70s. Conan, upon arriving in the modern day, has a lot of weird and, in his opinion, I'm sure disturbing experiences. One sees him harassed by an elderly woman who hits him with her bag because she believes he is too scantily clad. She's like, cover up your bottom, sir. Cover that up. Conan doesn't like this very much, and so he dumps her in a trash can. Literally, she's just stuck in it, and I'm just like, wow, Conan, that's pretty intense. She's just an old lady. He then runs into a cab driver, striking her vehicle with a sword, believing it's a monster. She ends up taking pity on him though, saying she senses he is mostly harmless, despite the fact that he is super muscly, looks pretty angry most of the time, and just struck her cab with the freaking sword. In the end, Conan disappears from New York and is transported away when he is struck by a bolt of lightning, which does not seem to really surprise the police officers who witnessed that. I guess in modern day New York, where superheroes exist, life is so fantastical that nothing really phases you. Also, maybe that's just the 70s, like maybe in the 70s people got struck by bolts of lightning and disappeared and people were like, that's totally a normal 70s thing to happen. I don't know, I wasn't alive in the 70s, so I don't know if that's true or not. Number 5. What if Vision of the Avengers conquered the world? Time to answer that burning question you always wanted answered. What if Vision of the Avengers had conquered the world? No? Did no one need this question answered? Well, too bad, because you're getting an answer. Vision is a supremely intelligent android, so if you're thinking this will probably end well for Earth, you're not completely wrong. Vision ruling does bring about peace and an end to poverty and hunger initially, but he also places Earth and its heroes in an intergalactic war where they are forced to take on the Skrull and the Kree. And in the end, he's also responsible for the decline of civilization somewhat when humans rebel against his rule and take out New York City in an attempt to harm Vision, as his mainframe is stored there. When this fails and also eliminates millions of innocent lives as well as most of the superhero community, the humans turn on technology and evolve into further anarchy and chaos. Yikes. So basically, we shouldn't let Vision rule the Earth. That's the moral of the story. It's not gonna end well, probably. Number 4. What if Prince Namor of Atlantis grew up on land? I feel like a lot of the other heroes and teams that were highlighted in this early 2000s batch of what ifs got much more interesting concepts thrown their way. The answer to this what if is likely just what you imagine. Namor is kinda just less impressive. It starts off after Namor gets teased for being unable to swim. A Namor that can't swim. Yeah. Although I do feel bad for him getting teased, but still, I was like, wow, this is the reality we're in. He still ends up fighting alongside the allies and heroes of World War II, but without the power of Atlantis at his back, as he turns away from his heritage, instead choosing to ally himself with the land dwellers, instead of oppose them. In the end, however, when he's ordered to blow up his people because of their proximity to the enemy, he refuses, and does end up returning to Atlantis, but too late, as his people still end up getting blown up in the crossfire. Like most what ifs, Namor is left returning to the man we know him to be, the avenging son of his people and of the sea. It's like swimming, and he's like, I can swim now, and also I'm gonna avenge these people that died. Not Atlantis, no. Number 3. What if Captain America were revived today? This story is both weird and amazing. Also, I believe there are 2 versions of it, so to clarify, the one we're talking about here is from the 77 What If series, issue number 44. This story imagines what if we got the fake Cap before we got the real Cap. If you don't know that story, it comes from a retcon where Marvel chose to explain away the fact that Cap was supposedly around during the time we later said he was frozen. The retcon goes that the Cap and Bucky we saw after the original pair's disappearance at the end of World War II were actually fakes, who were driven mad from exposure to the super soldier serum, which obviously didn't work as well as it had with the original Cap. The fake Cap being revived first revealed just how intense he was when he started going after people he deemed communists and insisting that certain Americans, such as the youth and minorities, were far too divided and should be more patriotic. Fortunately, we come to the present day where the real Captain America is revived. He takes on the imposter imposter, and we get a pretty sweet cap-on-cap fight where the real Captain America actually tells the imposter that the USA only needs him as a reminder of basically how not to be. He goes on to speak to the people after defeating the crazed imposter that he told you that Americans were the greatest people, that America could be refined like silver, could have the impurities hammered out of it and shine more brightly. He went on about how precious America was, how you needed to make sure it remained great, and he told you anything was justified to preserve that great treasure, that pearl of great price that is America. Well, I say America is nothing without its ideals, its commitment to the freedom of all men. America is a piece of trash. He goes on to remind people it's not the flag they should fight for, but the freedom that makes this nation and its people great, and reminds people that they need to work to protect those freedoms for all Americans, not sacrifice them for the promise of greatness. It's also just like, it's a weird issue and it's a great issue. That speech at the end is like, it's beautiful. You should all read it. It's pretty great. Number 2. What if Betty Brant was bitten by the radioactive spider instead? This is the second tale in the what if someone else besides Spider-Man had been bitten by the radioactive spider issue. You might know about Flash and John Jameson, but do you remember Betty's story from this one, wedged in between the stories belonging to those two gents? It is actually super ridiculous. Betty faints when she is bitten because she actually can't stand spiders, and they make her queasy. Her powers surface while she's off to coffee with Peter and smashes the table in a rage while talking about her infuriating boss, JJ. It also features one of the most ridiculous Spider-Woman costumes I have ever seen. It's so ridiculous, oh my goodness. Number 1. What if the original Marvel bullpen had become the Fantastic Four? Yep, this what if story is pretty crazy, and it imagines what the Fantastic Four might be like if some of the original Marvel staff were transformed by cosmic radio waves into the FF themselves. It features Stan Lee as Mr. Fantastic, Sol Brodsky as the Human Torch, appropriate considering his first name, Jack Kirby with almost pinkish or purple hued hair in this issue as the Thing, and finally fabulous Flo Steinberg as the Invisible Woman. It all happens after the team receives a gift from a mysteriously glossy-eyed fan. It turns out the gift is some kind of contraption that the team thinks is a radio, but then it seems to blast them with a bunch of superpower granting cosmic rays, or their radio equivalent. The story sees the Marvel staff FF crossing paths with Namor and even taking on Skrulls. Number 10. What if the leader decided to buy a hat? This is a short one, but a great one. It comes to us from one of the comedic issues of What If in the '89 series. It's just a panel featuring a what if story where the leader buys a hat. Of course, because it is a comedy issue, the leader buys the most ridiculous hat there is. Technically, 2 hats. Propeller hats. I just love his super serious face. This one literally made me laugh out loud. Number 9. What if the Hulk landed on the peaceful planet that Reed Richards promised? This one is both weird, but is also kinda great. It does a really good job of highlighting the division between Bruce Banner and the Hulk and the difference between these two entities. We're also offered a glimpse into how these two manage to work together though, and at times teach each other and help one another. Instead of landing on Sakaar, Hulk lands on the peaceful planet that Richards had intended for him. The nature on this planet calms Hulk and soothes his soul. He and Banner, however, still have their issues and end up dividing the planet in half. Banner hunts and builds tech in an attempt to escape, but the Hulk finds happiness here and becomes worshipped as a god by a race of sorta cat-like creatures who eventually evolve to become cat people. When Banner learns of this, it's implied that he comes to terms almost with his imprisonment when at the end of the issue we see a version of the Hulk who resembles, or seems to resemble, Bruce a little more than he usually would. Hulk continues to protect the cat people from, well, giant alien snakes? I don't think they were always alien snakes, but that's definitely what they evolved into. Number 8. What if the X-Men had stayed in Asgard? This is an interesting story. Here we see the X-Men split as they decide whether or not to stay in Asgard. Those that would leave are permitted to do so, but those who would stay, like Storm, Magic, Wolfsbane, Karma, Cannonball, Rogue, Nightcrawler, and Cypher, are permitted to do so, to the point that there is actually no New Mutants team in Midgard any longer. Instead, we would have had a new X-Men team and basically no New Mutants, with those who stayed in Asgard finding a different kind of happiness there until they're forced to acknowledge that all of this was somewhat of a sham. These mutants are basically like, well, we could go back, but it's really terrible on Earth because people are really prejudiced towards us, and so we're just gonna We're just gonna chill here. This seems nicer in Asgard. Storm ends up fighting a frog version of Thor, and Magic is forced to take on Enchantress as each battles for power. In the end, Loki is defeated, as is Hela, and everyone who remains alive, which is pretty much all the mutants that chose to stay, live happily ever after in Asgard. What a nice ending. Number 7. What if Peter Parker had become Nova? In issue 15 of the 1977 What If series, it gives us a glimpse into 4 other options for Nova's true identity. One such option posed in these alternate storylines is Peter Parker. Here we see Peter become one of the most depressing characters when he is bitten by a radioactive spider that has absorbed a higher dose of radiation than the one on our world, or the Earth of 616. I mean, 616 isn't really our world. I don't know, do you guys think we live on 616? I think we actually have a categorization for this world. Meaning that instead of giving Peter powers, he loses the ability to control his legs, becoming paralyzed from the waist down. The shock of this accident also kills Aunt May, and Peter basically becomes the biggest sourpuss, blaming himself for everything, including the death of his aunt, and pushing everyone away from him. He refuses even to enjoy Festival Eve. Come on, Peter, everyone enjoys Festival Eve. What is Festival Eve, though? In the end, an Emerald Ray grants him the powers of Nova, healing him. Amazed, he immediately heads to his uncle for advice and interrupts a burglar breaking into his Uncle Ben's home. He kills the burglar accidentally while attempting to protect his uncle, and only becomes more depressed at the fact that he killed someone, refusing to be Nova, and once again blaming himself for pretty much every tragedy he has suffered or encountered in his life. This is very harsh, Peter. Like, I know Peter is normally a character who beats himself up a lot, but this is a lot even for Peter Parker. Number 6. What if the Fantastic Four had different superpowers? And kind of random ones at that, although they are explained as to why they make sense. But anyways, we'll get to that in a second. One of the weirdest of these powers being Reed Richards' powers. Each of their transformations in the story just draw more inspiration from their own personality itself, which is why everything is so strange. Which means in this scenario that Reed becomes just a floating disembodied brain with telepathic abilities. He goes by the name of Big Brain and travels throughout the Baxter Building, or its alternate reality equivalent, via a network of tubes that the FF had installed. Here Susan Storm gains powers which allow her to stretch, basically like Mr. Fantastic would have had. Johnny Storm becomes Mandroid, he's a robot, and Ben Grimm becomes Dragonfly. He's got wings. They look like dragon wings. The whole feel for me is more comparable to the awesome strangeness that is DC's Doom Patrol in this issue, which I don't hate because I like Doom Patrol. What if the Punisher was a stern yet fatherly type? I feel like it's more gentle, but it's the Punisher, so apparently it's hardcore. This is a little one-page story from What If, but I just enjoy it too much, so I had to share it with you. It shows us a very different kind of Punisher, a less grizzled and frightening Frank Castle, and much more disappointed in you guilt-trip dad version of the anti-hero instead. Still, people telling you that they are disappointed in you, it really sucks. So I can almost imagine this version of Frank as being actually pretty successful, especially given how fragile the egos and emotional states of most villains are. I feel like that punishment that Galactus is given in this story looks also impressively challenging given how large Galactus is and how tiny that piece of chalk is that he has to write with. It makes me think of just metal on a chalkboard, which is I just got chills up my spine thinking of it, both while I was writing this and actually just now as I was saying this. Anytime someone talks about metal or nails on a chalkboard, sorry if I triggered anyone. What if the X-Men lost Inferno? AKA, what if Sim and the Soul Sword had simultaneously returned to their accustomed spot in Limbo? Apparently. That's like the secondary question we're given in the story. In this issue, we learn what would have happened if the X-Men lost to Madeline Pryor. In this alternate reality, Sim and Maddie end up as kind of a power couple for a time, with Wolverine as their villainous pet, whom they feed human babies to, which a feral Logan apparently devours with glee. Wow. He doesn't even seem to be able to resist their making him into a monster, which is, strange, but yeah, I guess he's just fine with it. Rachel Summers, Phoenix, who is trapped inside a mannequin, does end up returning, giving the surviving heroes hope after the world is overrun by demons. Although also in this reality, Jean is killed by Madeline, so we don't have any Jean to save us. Wolverine kills Maddie as a reanimated skeleton after she seizes the Phoenix Force for herself, saving the world before he perishes. It's always strange when you have a skeleton Wolverine just killing people. Snicked, snicked. He also manages to kill Kitty before this while he is evil, which I'm like, Kitty, why didn't you just don't let yourself get hit? That's like your whole thing, but okay. This issue ends with Alicia Masters Storm, who is obviously the Human Torch's paramour here, giving birth to a baby in the new world, assisted by Rachel and Doctor Strange. Yay? I love you, baby. What a weird thing to say to your babies. I just feel like it's such a strange do mothers say that when their babies are born? I love you, baby. Number 3. What if the Fantastic Four all had the same power as Human Torch? This is a weird and depressing story that is one of 4 different stories included in an issue that asks the question, what if the Fantastic Four all had the same power? The answer when it comes to the Human Torch's power is that the FF gets reckless and basically endangers human lives. In this story we see the Flame On family accidentally set a building on fire while fighting, a building that happened to have a woman's baby inside named Angel while she was working at a cafe across the street. Don't worry, she had a sitter, the baby wasn't alone or anything, but still, it's not good. The FF realizes too late that the building has caught fire. They're able to save some people, but they can't save the baby, and the story ends tragically there. So I guess them all having flame powers would not be good. We shouldn't do that in the main continuity. It'd be sad. Number 2. What if Conan the Barbarian were stranded in the 20th century? If you were around for part 1 of this list, you'll know Conan visited modern day New York once in the What If series. This time around we answer the question, what if he never left? Here Conan gets into more trouble, is arrested instead of leaving, but escapes the law and ends up as a sort of unaware villain. I don't think he knows he's a villain, but he's definitely pretty villainous. He ends up working alongside criminals and returns to Danette, the cab driver he fell in love with previously, in an attempt to impress her with his new clothes and his wealth. She tells him she isn't into this new Conan, who she describes as looking like a pimp. I mean, he does have like a leopard or something on a chain. Leopard? Cheetah? What do we call that animal? What do you call an animal with spots? In the end, this path leads Conan to an epic battle with Captain America, which ends with Cap offering him a place on the Avengers, basically in a weird turn of events. Captain America's like, I respect you, also you got some problems, you should join the Avengers. Conan does not accept this offer, but he does ponder it at the end of the issue, as he looks like wistfully out the window in a very tight t-shirt. I think he needs a bigger t-shirt. Number 1. What if Thanos changed Galactus into a human being? This issue is just ridiculous good fun. This is the first story featured in the 1989 issue What If No One Was Watching the Watcher. Here we see Thanos decide to punish Galactus, whom he is fighting in an even worse way than by killing him. Instead, Thanos turns Galactus mortal and he appears on Earth with no recollection of who he is, and coincidentally looking a lot like Elvis Presley. He is found by a waitress named Gertrude who takes him in and believes herself that he is an amnesiac Elvis. She educates him on what she thinks is his history and his music, and weirdly enough Galactus also has the ability to sing just like Elvis. Huh? He ends up falling in love with music and starts playing and gaining prominence as people believe he is the real king returned from the supposed dead. He even refuses to return to his life as a god when Adam Warlock finds him and reveals the truth about his history. That's just how much Galactus loves music and his new life with Gertrude and her son. I love it.